Okay, it's about time to start the class. And like we were saying, we're going to talk about communication, basically formal communication in business. And that's why today we're going to cover the topic of corporate communication. In this class and in your other class, your, well, actually two other classes, your leadership class and your marketing class, you have covered some parts of this topic also. So we're just going to take that knowledge from other classes and we're going to use it here so that you can learn to use the English vocabulary and how it is explained and used for this topic, okay? And I'm just reminding you that the topic that we are studying right now is about business presentations. And in order to talk about business presentations, we deal with communication, right? Right. Okay. So I have to answer myself right. Therefore, let's go and start sharing the information from, I have a PowerPoint presentation ready for you. So I'm starting sharing it and I'm going to start displaying it as a presentation. All right. Just as a reminder, as all the time, if you have any questions, don't hesitate, just take your microphone, open it up and speak. Or if you prefer to speak to the chat, just do so, which is fine. Okay. So, and if you got here late after we checked on the attendance, make sure that you communicate yourselves. Otherwise, if you enter but you didn't say anything or mention anything, it's not easy to know that you're here or not. All right, so yes, corporate communication. And yeah, basically we're gonna cover that. We're gonna talk about strategies and different points of communication through business. And that's why it's called corporate communication. So let's go. And we start defining basically what corporate communications mean. And it's basically some strategy, or we can call it about strategic management to manage, per se, to manage anything with relationships. It could be inside, or saying it in other words, within the organization, or externally between the organization and a different organization or company. So it's basically something with strategies, and the key issues to talk about corporate communications will be, yes, strategies, issues, and relationships with audience as a resume, or as, if you want to put it in that way, as resuming the information. Yes. Therefore, nowadays, organizations, companies in this era, they operate through different departments, something that you already know. And the thing is that you have to talk about relationships, how to build relationships, and basically you have community relations there, but also you have to communicate with government, so you have to establish government relationships. Then, of course, your customer or clients are super, super duper important. So you have to have customer relationships. And also you have to have labor relationships. That's a must. You do have to have labor relationships. And of course, to deal with all of that, you have to have human resources. If you are going to deal with within the company or within the organization communication, both at the corporate level and at the business unit level. So it doesn't matter if you're communicating with your customer or if you're communicating with the community or the government or your labor, all of your employees, then you have to deal with two different levels. business unit level, which is like inside, and also a corporate level, which could include the outside part or all of the stakeholders. That are needed for the organization to even exist. Also, they have various stakeholders who play a role in achieving the organization objectives. Organizations use communication to communicate with these targets to achieve their objectives. So basically, an organization, company, a corporation, they have to have a plan, right? So in terms of management, you're talking about designing all of these strategies for the company. And in that, just as a reminder, in every organization, if you want to do the things, well, if we want to talk about quality, you have to have a plan that includes your mission and vision for the company. And of course, with that, at the end, you're going to have a policy. And on that policy, you are going to end up having objectives for the company or for the organization. And that's why to be able to target the objectives, to get on and to achieve them, we need communication. So this time, we're not just talking about communication on the level of a dialogue, because we have discussed that already, a dialogue that you have the source and then the message and of course the receiver. No, we're talking a little more business related this time. Okay, so yes, we need communication. Then, if we're talking about corporate communication, this is about speaking of the communication activity, which we have it in different color here, which is generated by a company and directed to all relevant target groups. So basically we're speaking or we're talking about communication within all of the levels related to the corporation or the organization, all the levels, and including all of the stakeholders. And like we said before with the last slide, what we were saying, it's about achieving the objectives that the company has. That's why communication is so important. And we need to establish a good communication. That's why words like strategies come very useful here. And then words like tools refer that they might exist, tools for communication or for communicating successfully in a corporate level. So that should be very important, and we need to consider those things to be able to succeed or to achieve. Well, that's what success will mean in a company, to achieve all the objectives. Right? So another point here is that each item of communication must convey and emphasize the corporate point of view and its identity. And that's why I was referring before to the mission and vision of the company, because that's the identity that it has. And if you want to look at this graph that we're including here, we're mentioning here all of the relevant groups. Yes, we have management because we're talking about managing the company through communication, but we have all of the different levels included: production unit, human resources, finance, public relations, customer service, and so on. And of course, it could include more stakeholders like customers, the public in general, investors, definitely stakeholders, the government. It could include, in terms of communicated externally, media, and of course, internally, it must include the employees. which are going to be related to all of these points, from top management to production unit to human resources, which is basically the unit that is going to manage them. Any questions until this point? Any questions? Are you understanding the topic? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
No question.
Thank you, Carmen.
Any question?
Okay. All right. So since we're talking about corporate communication and we're talking about also public relations, let's make some points very clear. This is what corporate communications and public relations is not. They are not press kits. So it's not just to relate to the press or the media, which is sort of the same here. Press releases or news conferences, websites, or schmoozing. This is hard to pronounce. Schmoozing. Schmoozing is actually a way to communicate where you try to influence someone, but in a way that it's not, it might not be really appropriate. And it might be something like what we call in Spanish, like haciéndole la barba, but communicating in that way. So yeah, corporate communication is not explained as defined by the media, but it can certainly use the media. As we said in the last, in the previous slide, we included the media because it's one of the important things to communicate, especially if the organization, it's a big corporation, you basically need the media to promote yourself, to keep or to maintain a good image, to keep your clients or customers getting your ideas and staying with you through the rest of your existence as a corporation. So just the understanding, corporate communication is not just public relations, and public relations is not just referred to using the media. Okay, so let's keep moving forward because it's about like 30 slides, so we need to continue. Why do corporates or corporations need to develop effective communication? So what do you think? Why would it be important? Come on, we just mentioned that. Yes, Carmen?
No, it's me.
Oh,
To
Connie.
avoid problems or future problems.
Well, basically, that's one of the good things. If we develop good and effective communication, we basically will end up avoiding problems. And we can prevent, if we develop effective communications, that means that we are planning on it so that we can prevent, we can stop problems from happening by communicating correctly. That's why this image is being used in here. So if you wanna see the image, there are dots that are connected. And even in different colors with the lines. So meaning that there might be from different relations or from different type of relations or from different departments between the company. But in the end, we establish some networks that help us develop an effective communication. So if we talk about acquiring resources, like when you are buying things, you need to order those things, the resources. So you need to communicate if you want to operate. Let's just say resources could be infrastructure, meaning of it could be machinery, it could be tools, it could be as simple as papers, pens, some electronic articles or devices. So they must be necessary. And in order to buy or to order all of those things, you need to communicate. We need to plan for that. We need to develop effective communication for that. And of course, we were talking about the stakeholders. We need to communicate with all of them. And they might be different. Because stakeholders, if you remember the definition from this, they could include clients, they could include investors, they could include also suppliers, and so on. So if you take a look at the difference between all of them, they are very different from each other. That's why we need to create effective communication with everyone. And also communication with employees to increase their loyalty. Does anyone know the definition of loyalty? I'll give you an extra point if you can tell me what loyalty means. I know the meaning, but I want some of you to participate. Loyalty. 5 seconds, because you're gonna end up looking it up on the internet, and that's not really the point. But okay, loyalty.
I know the idea, but I don't know how to say it. Sorry.
No, well, try to explain it. Just go around with different words.
I don't know. I usually listen a playlist that it's called Loyalty Playlist. So I have an idea from that song, but I don't know really what does it means.
Okay,
Sorry.
what does the song says? What does that song tell you?
No, sorry, I'm very bad.
You can do it. You can do this. Being loyal. Being loyal to the company. What do you think it means?
It's like being like having respect to the company, something like that.
Yeah, it includes something like that. Having respect for the company, yes, and a little more.
Loyalty is in Spanish is lealtad, no? And
you're changing to Spanish. That's not good, but now try to explain it in English.
it's like to have responsibility with the company.
Well, now that you said it in Spanish, everybody's going to like try to translate it.
It's
but
something like the support.
Okay, so it would be like, okay, support, responsible, respectful, to take what Maria mentioned also. So yes, basically something like that, something like being truthful, faithful. If you want to talk about relationships in terms of being faithful, it's like, okay, let me explain between relationships, speaking of relationships between one person and another person. Okay, so to be loyal will be to be faithful, because if person A and person B are into a relationship, they should be faithful to each other. They shouldn't be seen as C person, meaning of like person B could meet a person C and start a relationship behind person A's back. So that would be being unfaithful, like being involved with somebody else. And in terms of speaking or relating it to loyalty, will be something like that. You are supposed to be loyal, support in all of the terms your organization. If you are an employee of that organization, you should be responsible, supportive, respectful. You should not complain because you should be happy by working with them because of the good communication. So Yeah, I just made a different example because I related it to being faithful. Faithful. Oops. Faithful. Which is sort of like a synonym of loyal. All right, so after the explanation of that, yes, because we need to increase the loyalty from employees, and another one very nice, to influence the environment within which they operate. All of the people involved should have a varied environment if they have an effective communication. To retain their license to operate, this is basically the communication that you have with government. If you do have an effective communication, you just keep operating and it's fine and it's perfect. To improve the image, something that we have talked about in the other class and your leadership class, we talk about image from the last few weeks. And this is basically related to communicating in a very effective and very good way, improving the image. To encourage all employees to work together to support the company's objective is not just to increase their loyalty, but to keep working for the mutual objectives. And of course, another thing which is related to marketing or to the marketing, which is to develop corporate branding. We're going to talk a little more about the marketing in this presentation from today. Okay, so in all organizations, communication flows as the following, which is like the common way to understand it. It could flow. Oh, I just made a drawing over there. It could flow vertically, which could be both ways, or it could flow horizontally or horizontally. The flowing of the information could also be related internally and externally. Internally, very basic. It's the way that employees talk with each other at various layers of management. For example, if we go and see the organization of the people that I included here, you can have the internal communication between the president, the managers or management, the supervisors, and all of this stuff at the different ways, vertically and horizontally. And it can be also formally, or it could be informally. Which one is more recommended when you're talking about corporate communication? Will be basically formally, because you want to keep growing. You could use informal communication between the same level, horizontally speaking, but in terms of having the best ways of communicating, you want to keep it formal. But yes, not all communications in an organization are work related, so some of them will be informally. And I just included these diagrams to help you understand what we are talking about. And also, this is a resume or a summary of what we were just saying in the last slide, which includes the definition of that, corporate communications between internal and external. It could be formal and informal, and the flow of it is vertical or horizontal. And all of them, the communication, it helps management to communicate, and it helps the organizational or the corporate communication. It uses marketing communication. That's why I mentioned, yes, we're going to talk a little more about marketing. And of course, it helps to create images, something that we just mentioned before, to build a strong brand and to develop reputation. So this is like the summary of that information from the last few slides. Therefore, when we talk about communicating, I think who mentioned this? Probably Carmen before. when we said that why do we need to have an effective communication? And one of you said, okay, to solve problems or to eliminate problems. Okay, problems might come as risks. Then we have risks in communication. Then we could also have those certain problems like crisis in communication. We could also have those type of problems that like are like issues from management, or we could resolve some of those problems as the organizational identity. And to be able to get rid of the problems that are outside of us, we may use, as we were mentioning before, strategies and audience relationships. Build relationships and build those using strategies. Strategies as tools that can help us communicate in a better way. Let's move forward. Then if we're talking about strategies, what are we saying or what are we trying to convey? Okay, this should be in a macro level orientation since we are talking about all of the corporation, corporate communication, remember? We're talking about everyone, including the outsiders and of course the insiders. So it should be at that level if we're talking about strategies or using strategies, and it should have implicit or explicit choices resulting in trade-offs with these things. The strategy should convey not exactly who or what, but both. Not just when versus how or why versus what, but all of them. It is phrased as goal setting. Remember that when we started speaking and when we started defining all of these things, we were talking about the objectives. The objectives will lead us to reach the goals. And anticipating others' reaction. How are everyone that are related to the corporate communications are going to react? And it serves as a basis for action. So is it good to build strategies? Of course. In terms of communication, we should think about having strategies. What makes a strategy effective? This is like something basic. It links to organizational goals that we just mentioned. It legitimizes some issues and delegitimizes others. So problems that are not even, we shouldn't even take the time to just take a look at them because they might not be important for the company. It shapes memory. It makes sense out of the confusing and ambiguous, and it provides point of identity and evolves. Evolución. Yeah. So when we in quality, since you are industrial engineering and productivity and quality, when we talk about continuous improving, we talk about evolving. And that's why it's good to use strategies. Okay, so if we talk about the communication, corporate communication in terms of strategies, we could consider some different points. The first one, we could talk about the strategic communication like in that way, but in terms of management, at a management level. At the management level, that means that all of the employees with authority, those at the top, and then this type of communication, it's good to have it like a type of persuasion, which is to persuade the audience that the goals of the organizations are worth achieving. There should be different ways to do that. We're going to talk about that in the terms of marketing. I just mentioned it before, and in the next slides, we're going to be using those terms, okay? So in that sense, when we talk about the strategic communication in terms of management communication, then we should consider internal and external communication, of course. Because at this level, employees with authority, they have to communicate not just internally, but also externally, especially with the stakeholders. All right, so communication is one of the most important skills a manager must have to gain the acceptance for the organization goals, develop shared vision, establish and maintain trust in the organization, initiate and manage the change process. Why are we talking about this? Because we talk about a strategy of communication included in communication management. But if we set the goals in terms of communication, then if we are not that good at communicating, then we can use a specialist. Communication specialists are needed to support managers. At the manager level, you can always ask for help, because remember that a true manager should be a leader. And a leader should work as teamwork. Therefore, at that level, you should have specialists to support and improve the effectiveness of the communication. Basically, you're going to have the other managers or the other ones at the same level as you, at the management level horizontally, but also you're going to have the supervisors, which are the ones that come below the management level. And they are supposed to help and improve the effectiveness of communication. Good? Are you understanding all of the vocabulary? I hope so. And well, if not, you're certainly going to be practicing this week, so don't worry about that. And you can just come back and watch the video of the class as many times as you need to keep practicing. Then it's not just about management communication, but we could also talk about a second strategy, which we could call it organizational communication. And remember that this is about corporate communication. Then what does it mean to have organizational communication? These are communications between the organization, inside the organization, and all of its audiences, which are investors, the public, the shareholders, financial journalists, investment analysts, regulators, legislators. So basically all of the stakeholders. So all of the audiences are all of the stakeholders. Partes interesadas, just in case that you don't remember this. I just had to mention it in Spanish. It doesn't directly apply, or it's mentioned to generating sales. But this is about developing long-term relationships.
Hola, Milpa.
Carmen, you have your microphone open. Somebody went to.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. It made the day. All right. Okay. I just lost it. Okay, so we were saying that it's not just about generating sales, but developing relationships, but long-term relationships, which are most important. It's applied at a different style of communication, which is about messages that are more formal and honest. Like I was saying, it's better to give the messages or to communicate formally. If you're talking about long term, you have to have vision. It is initiated by external parties, and that means that the audiences decide whether the organization should communicate with them. That's why it's called organizational communication. It comes from the outside, it's basically external, but we need to have a long-term relationship with them. as a strategy to keep growing and, like we said before, to keep evolving as a company. Number 3 of one of the strategies that we can talk about would be marketing communication. I was telling you that we were going to talk about this. Marketing communication, we can call it as an abbreviation. It's very important to support management communication. You cannot have just management communication without marketing communication. It gets the bulk of the budget in most of organizations. Yes. Especially if they are big corporations, most of the budget, meaning like most of the money that you have to invest, it is spent in marketing, because you want to keep communicating, of course, externally with all of the stakeholders, but most of them will be your customers, your clients. So you need to spend money in marketing. Traditionally, it's termed promotion, but promotion, it's part of the 4 Ps, las 4 Ps de mercadotecnia, which is promotion. I don't know if you remember this, but you took a class before. The 4 Ps are promotion, product, price, and place. Yes. So let me clear all of those. This is 1 P, promotion, product, price, and place. And it aims at facilitating the process of exchange. The organization shoots the target market, and they avoid communicating with those that are not interested. So we spend money to check who the target market is, and we spend money to do all of the marketing. And this, in terms of marketing, we're not just talking about verbal communication, written communication, or the simple formal communication. We are also including the media here. So now is the time to include the press, for example, web pages, and so on. Social media. Yeah, because nowadays it's better to promote through social media because it's easier to get to the target audience or the target market. Then if we're talking about marketing communication, this is all of the forms, all of it, of communication between an organization and its customers and potential customers. That's why we could talk, or we could mention flyers, the logo, the concept creation, the printing of all of this, publication, like in the press, like some magazines or the newspapers, business communication in between different businesses. So it's all of those terms that should be included to communicate to the market. That's why it's called marketing communication. And it facilitates to exchange and establish the meaning of the brand, or what it's called branding. So I'm thinking like I'm right now in a marketing class, but yes and no, because yes, we're trying to remember all of those terms, but in English, but also we're trying to apply them into business presentations. In business presentations, which is unit number 4 for this class, they include communication. And especially for us, we should be corporate communication. Okay? Yes. Yeah. So I'll keep moving forward. Continuing. So there's a mix that we could define as the marketing communication mix, or the mixing of it, which will be, yes, the target, it's the consumer audiences, the channels through the audiences, and of course, all of the stakeholders' audiences. So in the middle, we can say that we're talking about audience. Then for the marketing communication, all of the outside parts should be included. So it's not just about advertising o anunciarse. It could be also word of mouth, I don't know if you remember this, but this is part of also about the image of the corporation, the branding, personal selling. Oh, this was repeated. Okay, it's branding again. Sales promotion, public relations, packaging, very important, the packaging, how it looks, it communicates a lot. Sponsorship, exhibitions, internal marketing, websites, and so on. Yes. And you know what? I was just thinking, since we're talking about vocabulary right now, most of the vocabulary here, you already know it. You study it before, or some of this vocabulary in marketing, especially since we're talking about marketing right now, they use the English vocabulary. And sometimes it's like the English like slightly moved and it sounds like a version of Spanglish. But yes, it is, all of these terms shouldn't sound new to you. So this should be vocabulary that is kind of like very similar to what you use in Spanish, but also that you are accustomed to it already. Like public relations, like sponsorship, like exhibitions, like websites, like packaging, branding, all of those terms, you already knew them before, but now we're using them in one example, which is communicating in a corporation. All right, so since we're talking about corporate communication and we're talking about strategies, we could also talk about tools, certain tools to use for corporate communication. And in order to achieve this, there's something that is called integrated communication. And we can divide those in 4 different ones, which could be integrated marketing communications, application of visual identity systems, using the visual part from everyone. It's also called the house style, depending on teamwork, or we could certainly use the adoption of centralized planning system. Let's take a look at them and see which one could be, or which tool could be helpful for us or for anyone. There's the 4, you could use the 4, but there's something a little more consistent and more important in those that comes after the explanation of these 4. So let's explain all of those 4. Number 1, which is integrated marketing communication, is about the consistent messages free of contradictions. This is very important. And this is what we can call integrated marketing communication, which is like keep speaking with your audience, keep talking with them. That's why it's called consistent messages, or in other terms, free of contradiction, to describe a process for building a fully coordinated communication system inside the organization. So it is good. This is a tool, integrated market communications. Then we have number 2. Oh, no, it's a little explanation of the integrated marketing communication, the IMC, which is identifying the target, segmenting audiences, determining messages, and allocating resources. This is basically what you were supposed to learn when you took the marketing course about a year ago. And in terms of the communication of marketing. Then visual identity systems, they are to produce consistent themes on products and service through the use of common names, logos, sound, packaging, furniture, building design, and even smells, part of the visual identity. It's sort of like what is more related to the branding part. And this leads to the emergence of identity firms. The emergence. To call it identity, or to be able to have a branding of the corporation, It's an uniform set of symbols, guidelines for employees, and kind of like to be on a uniform mode, a uniform image for the organization. That could include the clothing for the employees, of course, the way of greetings, the way of speaking inside the corporation, the way of publishing something on the screen with the logos. So yes, it's about giving a visual identity, and it will help to be consistent with the themes and to keep the good communication. In terms of like fulfilling the strategies that we just talked in a few moments ago. Number 3, which is about coordinated teamwork. It's about the teamwork, the people, of course. A teamwork is not just from one person, but it's made from more people. And the teamwork gets a common policy and evaluates its execution, and it integrates communication. And of course, the goal for this, or the objective for coordinated teams work groups, it's about mobilizing the employees, get them to move with communication. And that's why it's called coordinated team. And another tool, last but not least, number 4, it's communication planning system. That could also work. And when we talk about the CPS, we're talking about a software. It could be useful to have softwares for helping communicating inside or outside to target audiences. It's saying to internally and external audiences. It helps us to manage and control at a general level by providing employees with certain information. And it could offer standard structure of reports that can be used in various situations. So you could have a software to manage all of the communication, which could include, this software could include formats or place to register information that you might send to the external audience, or that you might send to the internal audience. It's up to the company which tool is helpful. You could be using all of the 4 different tools at different levels, and it should be even better if you're able to use all of the tools. Because not all of the companies, if they're not that big, they might not invest in the use of a software, but they could invest in the visual, they could invest in coordinating teamworks, and of course, they could invest in integrated marketing communication. Because they don't need that much of a different investment. But if you're talking about using a software, it's something that you have to add. Then if we're talking about strategies, tools, we should also consider the types of communication inside the organizations or corporations. And this paper here from Gruen and Hunt, they talk about 4 different types of public relations practices that are focused for the corporations or organizations. And they divided in these different 4: press agent, which is like propaganda, or using the press, la prensa; public information, any information that is made public; two-way asymmetric communication; and two-way symmetric communication. Basically, the last 2 are basically the most important, but all of these types of communication happened, but they are different or are different levels. So let's see. According to their point of view, the first model, which is called the propaganda, or the way to use the press or the media, is the least desirable, but it's useful. It involves a one-way flow of information. That is why it's not the most useful, because you don't have a feedback at the same moment. But you could also use some engines, like if you're using propaganda on a social network, for example, like if you're doing this on Facebook, they do have different engines that can measure the way that you are receiving the information or the way that you are sending the information also. And you can get statistics from it, but it's a little more complicated to get it. But yes, it's basically it's a one way, but like I'm saying, you could use some hidden tools to also help you get more information from it. And some of the time the organization is not that honest about its activities, and it affects on the community. We're not saying that they are not faithful or that they might not be like really dishonest, but since you are not able to tell all of the information, sometimes when you are selling a product, you may just mention size and colors, but not the ingredients. That's why like you might not be like totally honest. And they will also resist efforts to establish a dialogue about it. It's basically that's why it's called only a one way. And the fourth, the two-way symmetric communication, it's kind of like the best one because it involves the two ways communication. Under this model, both parties, the audiences and the corporation, they are open and they are truthful. They are honest about each other's point of view to arrive to a common understanding. And definitely you have feedback from every side, from audiences and from anyone inside or outside the company, or if we're talking about the stakeholders, of course. Then we can have the four of them, which was press agent, or called like propaganda. Number two was public information. Number three was two-way asymmetric or two-way symmetric. Number four. And we could relate them between purpose, communication, and type of organization. And we can see which one might be better or might have a better response. For example, yes, for the purpose, first type, like propaganda, is just about selling or sending propaganda, but it transmits facts. And the two-way asymmetric, it gives feedback and persuasion, but two-way symmetric, it gives mutual understanding. If we only talk about communication, which is basically the topic for today, in terms of propaganda, it's only one way, not so much information. Public information, it still is one way. It's truthful, but it lacks some information. But these two over here, the two-way, are in favor in the sender and accurate info, and it balances interest. For what type of organizations are they most useful? Well, we have some examples here. For press agent propaganda, we can talk about entertainment, sports organizations, and all of those organizations that are related to like movies, music, and so on. That's why it's called, yeah, the entertainment, and not just sports, also about games, etc. For public information, we could talk about nonprofit and or governmental organizations. Instructions about health and safety for any organizations. It will be very good to use this type of information communication. Then if we talk about two-way asymmetric, it will be like for public relationships agencies, any organizations that compete between each other, pharmaceutical organizations, because you need feedback. You need to do some investigations here. And every organization that does R&D, research and development, investigación y desarrollo, they should have this type of communication. And two-way symmetric, it should be for everyone, for every type of organization. It will be useful because it's two-way and it's truthful. So it depends on which type of organization you are working for, the type of communication. You could also have like the same way as we were referring to strategies and tools. You could have these types of communication, the 4 of them or 2 of them or 3 of them or just one type of them. So it depends on the decisions on if we go again and talk about the strategies. So it will be good to relate this to management communication and to have management relate to this. And if they can, use the 4 types. It's better. And last but not least, we're almost finishing. Since if we want to talk about effective communication in a corporation, we could talk about this set of like line. We could use strategies. We're going to talk about the PPT and KAB model, which are different models. We could identify the identity of it, like bringing the identity, which is getting to branding. And it gave us the common starting points to get policies for communication, políticas. That's what we're talking about, policies. So we can end up regulating or getting like internal regulations, which are the policies for communicating. Starting with strategies. We are referring to ensuring that the organization communications policies are derived from the core strategy identity brand to develop a common starting point, which is same thing as what we were talking before, but with different vocabulary. We were talking about continuing with the mission of the company and following the vision, which will get us to get the target through objectives. So that's what we're talking about when using corporate communication. The corporate strategy, which we were referring in the last slide, it was talking about 2 different models. One model was the PPT and the other one was the KAB. What are they referring to? The PPT strategy is about promising. It promises to its most important internal and external stakeholders. It indicates how it expects to prove it and identify what tone of voice it wants to use to communicate messages to the audiences. So it promises, it proves, and it uses a tone to communicate effectively. I'm going to add that. And then there's a different model that is called the KAV. And the KAV model makes plans more specific when it targets the group's knowing, the knowledge. That's why it's the knowledge, to feel the attitude and to do behavior. So it's knowing your audience. It targets the groups about that, the knowledge of that, of the audience, the attitude of the audience, and the behavior. So how do they act with your information, both with respect to the entire company and with respect to the individual business unit? Very important. Respecting. Why is the word respect used in here? Because we're talking about attitude and behavior. And these are social characteristics of a person. So we are in with this, the KSB model is more applied to the feelings. Therefore, this is more moral, a moral method. So that's why we should respect. So far, we talk about strategies, we talk about tools, we talk about types, we talk about models for corporate communication. Again, I'm repeating, we talk about strategies, we talk about tools, we've talked about types, and we talk about models. Just two of them, which is, it is good to just practice the vocabulary and keep learning. And I gather all of this information from these two published publications from Ines Hammond and from Philip Lambert. So you can like get all of the information if you want it like complete from them. All right, so yes, that's basically all the information that we are gathering today. And since only a few of you have participated in the class, we're gonna do some exercise for you to keep participating through the week. Like I explained before, since we are in this unit number 4, we are gathering that homework that you submitted for an eco-friendly or environmentally friendly prototype that you did and you presented it in a video. Then that video is already ready on your platform, and you're going to have a discussion for all of the videos. You are going to use the most effective communication that you can to provide feedback for every video that you're going to see over there. I believe that there are like 9 different videos or so. And so everyone should participate, mentioning, giving some feedback in terms of professionally speaking, business applying, kind of like business selling it for the prototype. And so the feedback should be positive also. And like I'm saying, there's gonna be an explanation on your platform, of course, but you're gonna give feedback to everyone so that everyone can read it and can learn a little more. And of course, this is in English. And in terms of the vocabulary for corporate communication or business communication, we're going to continue using some vocabulary, maybe more common or simple way as you used to do it when you were learning English. You have 2 set of videos that are already also in the platform. So there's 3 videos that you're gonna be working with this week. But those other 2 are, one just to remind you what communication is, and the other one is about words, vocabulary. So you're going to watch the video and you're gonna write it down and complete a 3rd assignment with that type of vocabulary. So yes, you're gonna be busy for this week and the following week, but hopefully we are going to finish the class the following week, and you can just like feel free to like enjoy or keep enjoying English for whatever you're doing and whatever the assignment that you're going to be doing on your internships. So yes, we're almost done with the semester and you should be getting ready to your internship. If you have any question, don't hesitate to contact me, and just keep on reading, watch the videos, complete the tasks for the homeworks, and you should be fine with everything.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Connie. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your answer. Thank you, Maria. And to Maria, Connie, and Carmen, thank you very much for your participations. You got the point anyways. And for those of you, just as a reminder, for those of you who were not present on the time that we were gathering the attendance. It was at the beginning of the class. If you were not there, you were supposed to manifest yourself to let us know that you were here. If you didn't do it, it doesn't matter if your name is part of this. It's not complete because you didn't participate or you didn't mention that you were present. So I cannot help you if you don't say anything. Gavi, I saw your message. Just contact me if you want to WhatsApp or any other type. You could use email also, and we'll talk. We'll talk about it. If I can help you, of course, and if not, I'll try to lead you to somewhere else that can help you with those internships. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice rest of the afternoon, of the evening, and I'll see you later in the other class this week and next week for this class too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.